Besides computer science, Don Knuth is largely responsible for everybody's obsession starting in the early 80s with the minutia of typesetting. And there are generations of computer scientists who have spent countless hours fine-tuning the spacing of characters and so on. This has also had a big effect on Edsger. Those of us who have been reading EWDs know he switched from a typewriter around the time of TeX to a fountain pen, and then with Metafont, which allowed virtually anybody to compose any font, to a embossed seal which adorns his signed letters so that you can know that it is genuine EWD. Don?
Thanks. Yeah, the program mentions that that one of the pleasures I've had over the years is to play four-hands piano music with Edsger, both in Netherlands, in Noonan, and also here in Austin. And I just wanted to tell you that when we're playing a Haydn waltz, the thing I had to get used to was that Edsger doesn't count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's always 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. Now, I also want to say something about his famous book, Selected Writings on Computer Science. The first thing I noticed after getting a copy of the book was that it didn't have an index in it. And so I had to read the whole book in order to find out what he said about me. The reason, but actually, I have to also say in a more serious vein that I found it extremely impressive, especially in one respect. There's a couple of the chapters in that book talk about a function that he made up as examples of his discipline of programming. I'm not sure why he called it FUSC, F-U-S-C, but it's a function that it's a very interesting mathematical function that he came up purely on because of the discipline that he was following and following his instincts on it, and he proved some remarkable theorems about this function, and the last issue of the American Math Monthly, which came out 2 weeks ago, the April issue, has an article by Herb Wilf and Neil Kalkin where their theorem is essentially the same one that Edsger came up with by considering a computer program. Although these are very fine mathematicians who were motivated by completely different ways. It impressed me a lot that the purely programming considerations would lead Edsger to this very beautiful theorem, which is I don't want to go into the details, but it's the simplest known way to enumerate all the rational numbers. There's a sequence. A1, A2, A3, and so on, where you get all the rational numbers as in the following way: A1 over A2, comma, A2 over A3, comma, A3 over A4, and so on, and that gives you every rational exactly once, and it comes out of this FUSC function, and it was something that as I say I found extremely nice that the programming methodology would lead to something new like this. Once I gave a talk at Eindhoven, and I had planned secretly to use a go-to statement in my talk, and I wrote down this algorithm in English on the board, and I did step 1 and step 2 and step 3, and then I pretended to be alarmed, and I paused and I said, "Uh-oh," and I said, "Is it allowed to use a go-to statement in Eindhoven?" And Edsger said, "I knew this was coming." So, now, once I wrote a paper called "A Generalization of Dijkstra's Algorithm," and And in this paper, well, the basic idea of it was that Edsger's algorithm for shortest paths, which everyone knows, you can consider it as a method for finding the word of minimum weight in a regular language, in a finite state language, and I generalized this to find word of minimum weight in a context-free language. And so I showed my paper to Edsger and asked him, if he isn't this great and so on. And he said, well, it was a good result, but I wish you hadn't used ... so much in it. And I think my answer was, well, it's the only way I could avoid so many subscripts. But but I'd like to finish by just stating that it's an open problem. Some of you to take a look at that paper and see how you can do it without ... and without subscripts.
The next speaker should be known to all of you. Vicki Almstrom not only started off the meeting this morning as session chair, but she was one of the organizers. Vicki?
I'd like to start by telling you the rest of the story of something that Fred started this evening. 1979, I was a starry-eyed graduate student who got this large flyer about the Western Institute in Computer Science Programming Methodology lecture series. The names were all of the names on my textbooks, and I said, well, they have scholarships. I'm going to apply. Maybe I'll get one. I got one. I went and I met an amazing roster of people, heard amazing lectures, saw amazing interactions. Among the people that I met were some Swedes who told me about the very interesting incident during the lectures, during the weeks before the lecture series began, when Dijkstra, as the earthquake began, just sort of paused, looked a little irritated, and then continued. They were all very impressed. Recently, he was talking to Suzanne and happened to mention this, and he said he was very irritated because he thought it was a large truck going past. I, in my second incarnation as a graduate student, was here at the University of Texas at Austin, and I put off taking a course called Capita Selector because I felt rather intimidated. I thought, well, I'm not ready for that yet. It's one of my great regrets that I didn't take that course much sooner, because I think that it would have made very many positive effects in my career. Once I did get brave enough to sign up for that course, I saw a master teacher. The way in which the information was presented, the thoughtfulness, the kindness to the students was very touching, very much a learning experience besides the material that we were being taught. The end of the semester is always, for each student, a private 2-hour oral interview that is very intimidating before you do it the first time, but I discovered was one of the most meaningful experiences. It is a one-on-one to explore topics and to learn and to be taught as you're demonstrating, as you're understanding the material. Just absolutely a wonderful experience. Since becoming a faculty member here, I've been teaching software engineering for the last 3 years, and the first semester I was teaching it, we kept coming across Edsger W. Dijkstra did this, Edsger W. Dijkstra said that, and so just almost on a whim, I asked, well, would you be willing to come and speak for my students? And he consented, and I'm happy to say it's become a tradition. He's now, since 6